time is Isha?
38.
The Adhan is 8:38? Okay, and the Iqamah? Play it.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا عز وجل ويرضاه، واشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له، واشهد ان محمدا عبده ورسوله بلغ الرساله وادى الامانه ونصح الامه وجاهد في الله تعالى حق الجهاد حتى اتاه اليقين، فصلى الله عليه وعلى اله واصحابه ومن سار على منهاجه ودعا بدعوته إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. My dear brethren, brothers and sisters in our Islam. Maybe 4 years ago in Windsor, Connecticut, in Masjid Medina, I did a lecture, and it was about the importance and the necessity and the virtue of studying, learning, reading, and reviewing the prophetic seerah. To study, to review, to learn, to familiarize yourself with the seerah of Muhammad, alayhi salatu salam. And in the lecture we mentioned many things. Maybe 2.5 years ago, if not 3 years ago, in Canarsie, Brooklyn, I did a lecture at Masjid Khalid ibn al-Walid entitled The One Whom You Claim to Love. The One Whom You Claim to Love. In which we spoke about the appalling condition of many of us. وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي. I can't free myself, as Yusuf alayhi salam mentioned, said, I can't free myself. But the appalling condition of many of us regarding our factual information, what we actually know about this man whom we claim to love, Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. What do we know about him? His name, where he was born, what year he was born, his household, his lineage, how old he was, etc. What do we actually know about him? What do our children know about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Not all Muslims, but many of us have an appalling condition regarding this. So in those 2 lectures, I explained to the brothers and the sisters there in those 2 states and in those 2 cities that learning the seerah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a necessity. As we're going to read tonight, inshallah, a necessity. And not only is it a necessity, not only is it mandatory, but it's something which is extremely fruitful. Muthmira. It's fruitful. There are trees that are important to the environment. They give oxygen, carbon monoxide, etc. But our trees don't bear fruit. So the tree in itself always has a virtue. And the tree always has an importance. And the tree in the life of the human being has a necessity. But it doesn't always mean that the tree is what? Muthmira, fruitful. So there's a lemon tree, apple tree, cherry tree, walnut tree, chestnut tree, plum tree, etc. All these different types of trees that provide shade, that give oxygen, trees that help the ecosystem, the balance in the environment, the insects, the birds that live in the tree, on the tree, and the list goes on. And on top of all of that, there are trees that give man, birds and animals, but specifically man, sweet, tasty fruit. And that is the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's something that you need to breathe. It's oxygen. It's something that has an importance and an excellence. And it gives you a daily, tangible benefit. A daily, tangible benefit. And the closest way, the fastest way, the shortest way, bi'idhnillah, to Allah, and to the abode of his nobility and his honor and his generosity, is nothing more than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the closest way. Just like you have 2 points, the closest fastest way is a straight line. Straight line. So when the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the authentic hadith, in the Sahih, when he went to visit his neighbor, who was a Jew, wasn't a Muslim, wasn't someone that was his companion, someone who believed in him, was a Jew. So the Jewish man had a son. And the Prophet ﷺ heard that the son was very sick, very ill, on his deathbed. Death was knocking on his door. And he saw the young boy. And the very first thing that the Prophet ﷺ said to the young boy, he told him to make the shahada. He said, say la ilaha illallah. Obviously the young boy had a great deal of awe and respect for his father. even though he knew it was the truth. And if he did know it was the truth, then he wouldn't have even sought his father's permission. So he looked towards his father. What should I do? Can I obey this man, Abu al-Qasim, Muhammad? Is he the messenger of Allah? And subhanallah, how mighty is Allah Azza wa Jal to soften someone's heart, but at the same time to make their heart like a rock and a stone. At one time his heart was soft, and another time it was solid. The Jewish man, he didn't make the shahada, but he told his son, he says, Ati' Abu al-Qasim. He says, obey him, obey Abu al-Qasim, listen to him. So that's the type of softness. His son is about to die. Why is he telling his son to accept the religion of these Arabs, these backwards pagans, these Ummiyyin? Those who we can rob and steal and fornicate with their wives. We can cheat them, we can give them interest. They're animals, basically. They're not Jews. They're not descendants of Yaqub. They're not descendants of Ishaq. They're descendants of Ishmael. We can do whatever we want to them. But at the same time, Allah softened his heart to tell his son to take the Shahada and to accept the Iman. But at the same time, he himself didn't take it. He says, Ati' Abu al-Qasim. He says, obey this man, Abu al-Qasim. So the young boy, he took the Shahada. He accepted Islam on his deathbed. And the Messenger of Allah he said, Alhamdulillah alladhi anqadhahu bi min an-nar. He says, all praise is for Allah, who used me to save him from hell. I was the reason behind him being delivered from the hellfire. And if he's not going to the hellfire, then maybe the night time he's going to Jannah. كل نفس ذائقة الموت وإنما توفون أجوركم يوم القيامة فمن زحزح عن النار وأدخل الجنة فقد فاز. Allah says, every soul shall taste the bitterness of death. And you will only be giving your deeds in full. You'll be only giving your deeds in full, meaning that you will be given a taste of your deeds before this day. And that's the barzakh, the grave. But that's a different discussion, the tafsir of that ayah. Allah says, وَإِنَّمَا تُوَفَّوْنَ أُجُورَكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. You'll only be giving your deeds in full on the day of judgment. Highlighting point, Allah says, فَمَنْ زُحْزِهَ عَنِ النَّارِ. So anyone who's removed far from fire, وَأُدْخِلَ الْجَنَّةِ, and placed in paradise, فَقَدْ فَازَ, then he's successful. So therefore, if a person is saved from the hellfire, then bi'idhnillah, his masir, his destination is where? It's paradise. So that was a short, quick, direct way to Jannah, was Muhammad. So the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ isn't optional. It's not something I can read about, I can learn about. It's mandatory. It's mandatory. And not only is it mandatory, not only is it important, but it's also fruitful. It gives you immediate guidance. You may read a book of this one, of this person, of this issue, of this, and you may not get direct guidance. When you read the Prophet ﷺ, his life, what he did, what he said, what he didn't do, what he didn't say, you're getting direct, organic guidance. You're taking it from the raw source. And not from a second hand, a third hand, this additive, this color, etc. Raw, right from organic. See your garden in the backyard? I have cucumbers, tomatoes, potatoes, radish, carrots. I take it out of the ground, take it into my kitchen, rinse it off in the sink, chop, chop, chop. There's no farmer, there's no pesticides, there's no truck, there's no plastic. That's the seerah of the Prophet. It's fruitful. So bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, in these coming weeks and in these coming months, we want to start, inshallah, a course, a series on the Seerah Nabawiyyah, the prophetic seerah. Not the seerah of the Khulafa Rashideen, the companions of Bakr, Siddiq, Umar, Uthman, Ali, the 10 Companions. Not the seerah of the 4 Imams of Islam, but the seerah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. That's what we're going to talk about, inshallah. And for lack of time, we don't want to reiterate those points that we mentioned in those 2 lectures years ago. If you get a chance, please go back to them and take down the points that we have mentioned about why it is important to study the seerah, why it is necessary to study the seerah, and what is so beneficial and fruitful about studying the seerah. And we've mentioned to you just now a few points. So the book that we're going to use, inshallah, is a small book that's taken from a bigger book, like many books in our Islam. The book has been titled Tahdeeb Seerah Nabawiyyah, a summary of the prophetic seerah of Al-Hafidh An-Nawawi, rahimahullah. But that's not the original book. An-Nawawi wrote a bigger book called Tahdeeb Al-Asma' wal-Lughat, or Al-Lughat wal-Asma'. He wrote a book in which he spoke about different issues of people, genealogy, language, and things like this, right? And in the beginning of the book, he wanted to seek Allah's barakah. So he began by talking about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his life, and his name, and his lineage, and his genealogy. And that's where the book was taken from. So that is the material that we're going to use. Is the book in English? Has it been translated to English? I don't know. I'm not sure. I have to double check on that. What's important is the brothers who want to have the photocopy of the book, the PDF, we can supply you with the book, supply you with the link. You can put it on your phone or your smart tablet. Inshallah ta'ala, print it out. That way you can go back to it and have your own personal benefit. Brothers that know a little bit of Arabic, you're practicing, still use the dictionary. Brothers who know a lot of Arabic, inshallah, we'll try to supply you with the source. Bi'idhnillah. As far as tonight, then we're not going to read from no other place except for my favorite author, and that's Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala. And he wrote an amazing, magnificent book on prophets, on the Prophet's Sira. Anyone know what this book is called? Anyone know what book Ibn Qayyim wrote on Sira? Now you're going to hit yourselves in the head when I give you the answer. Sealed Nectar, that's not by Ibn Qayyim. That's by contemporary. You know the answer, you're going to be upset with yourself when I tell you. Going once, going twice, sold. Zadul Ma'ad fi hadi khayl al-ibad. Zadul Ma'ad, right? I told you what? Alhamdulillah, he said, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Most brothers will just hit themselves. Zadul Ma'ad. Provisions for the hereafter fi hadi khayl al-ibad. Concerning the guidance of the best of Allah's slaves. That's the whole book. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he wrote this book, some say when he was making Hajj, on the back of a camel, from Sham to Hijaz. And what library did he have on the back of the camel? What air conditioned, what studio or computer or laptop or Google or software did he have? What books did he have access to? Meaning that he wrote the book what? You say from the top. Freestyle. Everyone understand this? You got a pen and a pad, write it. I'm what? Spitting from the top. It's not there. La yastawiyani mathalan. And Allah says in the Quran, they are not what? They're not equal. They're not what, Mahdi? They're not equal. So he wrote this tremendous scholastic megaton bomb, major book that's studied today. They say he wrote it from his memory on the back of a camel in the hot sun, hopping up and down, bouncing up and down. You've been on a camel? And I'm not talking about a camel at the Philadelphia Zoo. But a real biting, spitting camel. How bumpy the camel is, right? More bumpy than a horse. And he wrote that book. So he called his book Zadul Ma'ad, Provisions for the Hereafter. Fi hadi khayr al-ibad, concerning the guidance of the best of Allah's servants. And as we've explained many times before, the scholars of Islam, of past and of present, they oftentimes give their titles, the titles of the books, rhythmic titles that rhyme and they're symbolic. Fath al-Bari, Sharhi Sahih al-Bukhari, Subul al-Salat, ila Bulugh al-Maram. Allah Azza wa Jal, He inspired man to think, to feel. He gave man the ability to speak clearly, and He gave him the concept of rhymes, the power of a rhyme. And that's what the Quraysh said about the Prophet ﷺ. Said at best, he's a poet, at best. If not mad, demented, delusional, etc. But at best, he's just a poet in his poetry, but it wasn't poetry. Everyone understand this? So therefore, the ulama of Islam, they would call their books, they would give their books titles that rhymed and made sense. So listen, Zadul Ma'ad. You have the Ad, Fi Hadi Khayril Ibad. Everyone understand this? And it's also symbolic. And most people, they don't know that this book is about seerah. It's a seerah book. And when she talks about everything that pertains to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He talks about Jabir, the people's need toward the Prophet, and how the Prophet was the best of Allah's created beings, and the blindness and the misguidance and the darkness that they roamed around in before the Prophet. He talks about the Prophet's diet. He talks about Islamic sexuality, the sex life of the Prophet ﷺ and of the Muslim in that book. And that is where that book comes from. What book? The Prophet's Medicine. That's not a separate book of Ibn Qayyim, as many people think, mistakenly. That's wrong. And not only is that inaccurate scientifically, but it also misleads you to implementing what you read in that book. That book is nothing more than a slice of a larger pie. The Prophet's guidance concerning prayer, zakat, fasting, hajj, jihad, dawah, and also medicine. And many people, they make a mistake regarding that book. Everything in that book, in that chapter, is not sit down from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is just an FYI or a fa'idah on the side. The Prophet's medicine is of two types. The ulama of Islam, they say the Prophet's medicine that is clearly attached and attributed to something spiritual and supernatural, barakah, such as black seed. Black seed. He says, "Inna hadhihi al-habbat as-sawda." He says this black seed is a cure of every sickness except for one sickness. And that sickness is what? Old age. Old age / death, death / old age. What's that black seed that the Prophet said about? What's the black seed? You want to buy it now, you want to get it. The herb store, you look online. What's the name of the seed? Sweet sunnah, salt, the pepper shaker. Is that the black seed? What's the black seed? I bought a book by a non-Muslim. Stay with me, a non-Muslim, a kafir. And which he wrote a whole book on the power of black seed. And he's not a Muslim. Huh? How many? Brother? Black cumin? Anybody else? What about mustard seed? Some ulama say this is mustard seed. And many ulama, and perhaps it's the correct view, is that it's shuniz. It's the name of it, shuniz. You Google it. S-H-O-O-N-E-Z. Google it right now. Google shuniz. Somebody Google it. I'm dead serious. Shuniz. Google shuniz. See what you come up with. And this is another example off the topic of how you can have the hadith, you can have the proof, but that doesn't mean you have the proper understanding of it. Black seed. How many seeds are what? Black. How do you take the black seed? Do you eat it? Do you drink it? Do you press it? Cold press it? Everyone understand this? Drink the tea. It's a very powerful thing. Too much, too little, etc. Having a dalil, the authentic narration is only what? Half the battle. The other half is the what? The fiqh of it. There are many things that have black seeds. Have what? An apple has what inside of it? Are we clear on this? Does it mean that? Apple seed? Linguistically it says habbat as-sawda, black seed. And who says that it's the black seed that's sold with the label sweet sunnah? I'm not hating on sweet sunnah, I'm just making an example. We're not with hating. Huh? That's against our constitution. Hating, that. We don't hate in the name of ilm. Abadan. Huh? What do you ever believe? What you got about shuniz, akhi?
How you spell it again?
No, it came up.
What you got? Bismillah.
It said black seeds are shuniz.
Black seeds are shuniz. So what run?
And it says Sahih Bukhari.
So Allahu Akbar. That's Google, huh? S-H-O-O-N-E-E-Z. That's how I would spell it. Shuniz. Shuniz. I would say shuniz, huh? Right, what else you got? Let's hear what the non-Muslims say about it. Yalla, akhi. Your Google skills gotta. We need to be strong, inshallah.
It says shuniz of the Arabs is moreover the same plant or seeds which is called black cumin.
Black cumin, as he mentioned. So we have another name. Scientific term, colloquial term. Fadl. Those watching on the live stream can participate as well. What else you got, ya akhi? You're being stingy to us. Oh, man. Tayyib, al-muhim. At the end of the day, the first type of the Prophet's medicine is the medicine in which the Prophet ﷺ speaks about that it's from Allah. And that it has a barakah. And that Allah has sent it down, and Allah has placed it, etc. That is the Prophet's medicine, which it is the sunnah and the reward for you to take it and to adhere to it. And then the second type of prophetic medicine is that which was known in 7th century Arabia. That which was known in practice in 7th century Arabia. That which they came up with themselves, their own experiences, they got from the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Ethiopians. And the people tried their best. And it's not necessarily a sunnah for you to implement this type of prophet's medicine. If you want to do it, do it. And if you want to go to the modern means, a pill, this tonic, this serum, you're open. Everyone understand this? It's something that the Prophet did as a human being, as an Arab man, in that time and in that place. And this can save you from a lot of confusion. Everyone understand this? Let alone what Ibn Qayyim mentions in that book of things that he brought. And Ibn Qayyim wasn't from Arabia, nor did he live in the 7th century. Everyone understand this or not? Everyone understand this? Everyone understand this or not? So Ibn Qayyim, he added things to the book of his own knowledge, his own deduction and reasoning. He was a scholar of medicine as well. So everything in that book is not directly from the Prophet's authentic spiritual way. We said that as a fact. So in this book, Zadul Ma'ad, that he wrote, speaking about Sira, and I don't think the entire book is in English. I know parts are for sure. There's a summarized version of Imam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab in English. And also parts of the complete version, but I don't think the whole thing is in English yet. As far as in Arabic, then it's in wide circulation. And as we said, this book is a book about what? Seerah. And there are many books on your shelf that you have that you may not have been properly trained in to know how to fully utilize them. And a tool is only as good as what? You use it. Sword is no value unless it's wielded what? Properly. You understand this? Our Sheikh Abdul Muhsin in Medina, he would advise the students of knowledge that when they went home to their countries in the summer, if they stayed in Saudi for the summer, to read this book. To make it their business to read this book. A volume a summer or all of it in one summer, depending on how many hours out of the day you read as a student of knowledge. And as we know, many scholars quote from this book. Ibn Hajar and Fath al-Bari always quotes from it. Sanani quotes from Subul salam. They call it fil hadi. Call Ibn Qayyim fil hadi. Ibn Qayyim, he says, فصل ومن ها هنا تعلم اضطرار العباد فوق كل ضرورة إلى معرفة الرسول وما جاء به وتصديقه فيما أخبر به وطاعته فيما أمر فإنه لا سبيل إلى السعادة والفلاح لا في الدنيا ولا في الآخرة إلا على أيدي الرسل ولا سبيل إلى معرفة الطيب والخبيث على التفصيل إلا من جهتهم ولا ينال رضا الله البتة إلا على أيديهم فالطيب من الأعمال والأقوال والأخلاق ليس إلا هديهم وما جاءوا به فهم الميزان الراجح الذي على أقوالهم وأعمالهم وأخلاقهم توزن الأقوال والأخلاق والأعمال وبمتابعتهم يتميز أهل الهدى من أهل الضلال فالضرورة إليهم أعظم من ضرورة البدن إلى روحه والعين إلى نورها والروح إلى حياتها فأي ضرورة وحاجة فرضت فضرورة العبد وحاجته إلى الرسل فوقها بكثير. Listen to these golden words. Words that some of the ulama will say regarding تُكْتَبُ بِمَاءِ الْعَيْنَيْنِ. Words so precious, so valuable, that if you had to make ink with the tears out of your eyes, it would be worth it. How much water is in your eyes? You just blinked, right? Something gets in your eye, you blinked again. Right? Dust gets in your eyes, right? What do? Your eye starts what? Watering and watering and watering. But no matter how much your eye waters, it's not but so much what? Water in your eyes. But words so valuable that a person could mix ink up with that water and write it down. That's how valuable it is. Or as Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, إِذَا سَمِعْتَ شَيْءٍ فَاكْتُبْهُ. He says, when you hear something, then write it down, even if it's on the wall. And one narration says, one of the sallahu salih, whether it was Ibn Abbas or others, my poor memory doesn't serve me well right now, that he would write so much. He would write in his hands when he ran out of paper. There was no Staples or Office Max back then. There was no Amazon Prime. You had to get the paper, pay for it, papyrus, or whatever. It's very difficult and costly to write. And that's why the ulama of hadith, when you see the manuscripts, you see them writing above, below, all around. Every single centimeter is used. He says that he would write it down in his scroll. When he ran out of paper, he'd write it on his hands. And when he ran out of space on his hands, he would write it on the bottom of his sandal. Because it was that valuable. It was that what? It was that valuable. Ibn Qayyim, he says, وَمِنْ هَا هُنَا. He says, and from this angle, and from this perspective, from this way, min ha huna, what he previously mentioned, he says you can know and you can realize the utter and extreme necessity for the people to know and to study and to come across and to familiarize themselves with that which the messengers brought. مَا جَاءَتْ بِهِ الرُّسُلُ. The message of the messengers above all other needs and extremes. You need water, you need bread, you need food to survive, fat, sugar, oils, carb, whatever. You need oxygen, you need air, you need sleep. These are all extreme necessities of the human being. You need to believe yourself. But knowing about the Prophet, knowing about his seerah, knowing about his way, he says it does what? It trumps all of them. Learning the seerah comes before what? Anything and everything. Alaykum salam wa rahmatullah. Am I clear on this? Learning the way of Muhammad and the way of the messengers, he says it supersedes all other necessities, which are clearly what? Necessities. But there's a prioritizing regarding these necessities. He says that which the messenger came with, and to believe in it, and to obey him. And there's no way that a person can be happy in this life and hereafter except via the hands of the messengers. He said the Rusul. And he didn't say anyone else. You cannot live happily. You cannot die happily unless you're following the messengers. Everyone understand this? Following this person, this one, my father, my imam, my scholar, my this, my that. He says the messengers. What they said, what they did, what they brought, and what they taught. He says there's no way that you can have a happy life in this one, nor in the next. He says, and there's no way for you to know the good from the bad in detail, except from them. You can understand things in general, because Allah has given the human being a fitrah, a natural, discerning mechanism to know that this just isn't right. And it does not need an encyclopedia to figure out that this is what? This is wrong. This is not Islam. There's no way that I left Christianity for this. There's no way that I left being an atheist for this. There's no way that I left and I escaped those bullets whizzing past my head. Huh? To do this and to practice. That is impossible. Everyone understand this? That's impossible. And it doesn't take a great detailed knowledge or level of knowledge to understand basic things in Islam. The fitrah, let alone common what? Sense that Allah has given the human being. Like he's given animals, animal instinct. Do we know what this is? Animals have an instinct to sense and to smell danger and harm. They're naturally created to sense when something is going wrong and it's not the right direction to go in. They know this. So no matter how kind you try to be to the lamb or the sheep on the Eid, you walk with it carefully, you hide your knife, what corner you go and the animal smells death in the air. Let alone the blood. He knows it's about to get slaughtered. And that's why you find certain animals that will put up a great fight and others will walk peacefully. He knows that he's going to slaughter it. So you try your best to be kind to the animal, but the animal has the instinct. Or you go on a farm and the animal runs away from you. Just now, we were in New Jersey on the Eid day. Alayhe, he picked out a sheep. The sheep was so wild and fast and fierce. Wallahi al-azim, it almost ran through the metal fence twice. His body was halfway through the metal fence. You know, a metal farming fence? They're like it's like each section, it's like a block. Teacher, assalamu alaikum. Good to see you, teacher. There's some tea for you. Bismillah. So the sheep almost ran through the fence just to get away. I didn't have no knife with me. There was no blood on me. But he knew what? Someone was trying to have lamb chops tonight. He says this. So therefore, he says, is that the only way that you can have things, the knowledge of good and bad in detail, he says, is through the messengers. So you can learn things basically through your fitrah and through common sense. But those things that was obeyed are going to be what? In general, and not in detail. He says here, and it's no way that a person can obtain Allah's good pleasure except through them. So therefore, the good statement, the good act, the good deed, the good character to have is nothing more than what they did and what they said and how they behaved. Listen to these words. That's the correct way. What the messengers did, that's the way to live and that's the way to die. He says, and everything that a person, or the statements and actions of people, character, he says it has to be weighed. It has to be measured on their scale. Is it a good statement? Go to the scale. Is it a good act? Go to the scale. Is this zud? Should I not eat meat? Should I be a vegetarian? Should I live a monastic life, not get married? Should I go here? Should I do this? Should I say this? Use the what? The scale. And the scale is a just and accurate scale. Precise scale. That is the way to live. And that's the way to die. How do I know that I'm not a failure in life? That I'm living a meaningful life? Because I'm imitating you, or this one, or this athlete, or this musician, or this person, or this, whoever he is. Or Muhammad's way. Even the Christians, unfortunately, oftentimes they may understand this better than some Muslims. And that's why you see the bumper stickers. What would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? Some of the Christians may understand this better than some of us. What would Jesus do in this situation? Would he what? What would he do in what? They use Jesus' life as a what? A scale. What you say, what you do, let's see what Jesus would have said and what he would have, what he would have done. As an indigenous American once said, he was a chief of a great tribe, Native American, and when the European settlers came upon his land, and they made promises and broke those promises, and they sold and they traded and they bartered, etc. And he proved himself to be extremely treacherous and raping and plundering and murdering, and finally trying to justify him taking the land and kicking him off of the land. Christianity. That you're a heathen, you're a pagan, and you must accept this man whose message, whose name is Jesus. You have to accept his way. And as long as we're Christians, and you're a heathen, an idol worshiper, you have no right to your land and your property or nothing. So the chieftain, you know what he said to him? He says, this man Jesus, based off of what you say about him and his character, I think that if Jesus was alive, he would be an Indian. Based off of what you say about him, that he was generous, he was kind, he never molested women, he never did this to his enemies, he did that, he forgave, he forbear, so on and so forth. Everything that you say about this man is what is in our culture. No one owns the land. No one owns the mountains or the rivers. It's for everybody. You don't understand this? The point I'm trying to get to is that hitman, he used that as the scale. No matter what you're saying of Christianity, like salam, Christianity, and you're right, you have the right to own and possess, he used the what? A scale. Based off of what you say about your Lord and Savior, you're not living right. So he says that that's the ultimate way of determining what is a good statement and what is a bad statement. What is the good way to behave and what's a what? A bad way to behave. Ibn Qayyim then says, and with regards to following the messengers, it is clear the people of guidance from the people of misguidance. The messengers, following them. He says, so therefore, the necessity of what the messengers brought and what they said and how they taught, it is above all other necessities. The necessity of the body to the spirit, the eye to light, the soul to life of the soul. He says, what necessity, any necessity you can think about or ponder, bring up in your mind, it cannot come before this necessity. He says, فَوْقَهَا بِكَثِيرٍ. He says, many degrees above. It may just be a close what? Close decision. I have the option between food and water. I'll take the food, but what? Barely. He says, no. Knowing what the messengers brought in general, and what Muhammad brought, he says, what? بِكَثِيرٍ. Above all other necessities. وَمَا ظَنُّكَ بِمَنْ غَابَ عَنْكَ هَدْيُهُ وَمَا جَاءَ بِهِ طَرَفَةَ عَيْنٍ فَسَدَ قَلْبُكَ وَصَارَكَ الْحُوتِ إِذَا فَارَقَ الْمَاءِ وَوُضِعَ فِي الْمِقْلَاتِ. He says, and what do you think about a man? What do you think about a person? What do you possibly say about an individual whose guidance, when it's taken away from you, then you become like a fish that's put out of water. The man's guidance that's so important to you that if it's taken away from you from one moment, you just did it again, Jabba. Keep blinking. You just did that. That short period of time, you live without Muhammad's guidance. He says you'll be like a fish that's pulled out of water. Well, thrown into the pan. Thrown into what? Frying pan. To be consumed. Doom, death. He says that's the need of the Prophet ﷺ's ilm, his knowledge, his legacy. For that split second, let alone, akhi, you live an entire day without the Prophet's guidance. You live an entire week without the Prophet's guidance. A month without the Prophet's guidance. A year without the Prophet's guidance. It's scary. 5 years, 10 years, and you haven't learned or done or practiced anything from Muhammad's way. How long will the fish survive when it's cool on deck? How long will it survive? Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala says, فَحَالُ الْعَبْدِ عِنْدَ مُفَارَقَةِ قَلْبِهِ لِمَا جَاءَ بِهِ الرُّسُلُ كَهَذِهِ الْحَالِ بَلْ أَعْظَمُ ولكن لا يحس بهذا إلا قلب حي وما لجرح بميت إيذامه. He says, so therefore, the slave's need is like this. If the slave is poor, if the slave is destitute, without the Prophet's guidance, then he's like the fish pulled out the water and thrown into the frying pan. He says, بَلْ أَعْظَمُ. He says, rather, it's even more dangerous. He says, however, the only people that can realize this and understand this and realize the depth of this is someone whose heart is alive. And he quotes a line of poetry. He says, a dead body never feels a pinch. A dead body never feels a what? A pinch. A corpse. Someone who's dead. You can pinch him, poke him, and he feels no what? There's nothing there. Think about when you sit down for a long time and your foot does what? Falls asleep, you get up, your foot feels heavy. It's hard to walk because your foot did what? Fell asleep. You can pinch your foot, you won't feel what? You won't feel anything. So someone whose heart is dead, someone whose heart has been strangled and suffocated through sin and love of the dunya and heedlessness from Allah's dhikr and ignorance, he's not going to feel this. He may go 24 hours and he doesn't feel out of shape or out of place being away from the Prophet's guidance. Think about a believer when you miss a salat, if you miss a salat, one other billah, how stressed out you are. You feel bad. Oh man, I overslept, subhanAllah. I missed the day in Ramadan. I made a sin, I made a mistake. I went back to this. You feel bad. You feel what? You feel bad. And this is from the wisdom, and some of the ulama of Islam say, why Allah Azza wa Jal decreed upon the Prophet and the companions to oversleep that day for Salat al-Fajr. They were returning home from a battle, and they were very tired, and they went to sleep. And he gave instructions to the companions to Bilal to wake me up. But we know the companions, they didn't want to wake up the Prophet ﷺ because when he was asleep, he was dreaming. And his dreams was what? Wahy, revelation. You understand this? So therefore, the Prophet ﷺ, he overslept. And the companions overslept. The Prophet woke up. Ya Bilal, didn't I tell you to wake me up? He said, O Messenger of Allah. He says, I was afflicted with that which you were afflicted. I was tired too, O Messenger of Allah. He fell asleep. And then they got up, and they traveled, they made the adhan, etc., and they offered the salat that they had missed. Some of the ulama of Islam, they say, from the wisdom in this is for believers never to despair and never to kill themselves out of grief if they make a mistake or the human nature takes over them. If the Prophet did it, then you should know what? Don't kill yourself over it. You be worried, concerned, but know what? Kill yourself over it. When I say this wisdom, this wisdom here, and that's why it states in certain narrations, he says that I'm a human being like you. I forget like you forget. And when I forget, then remind me. And it states in another narration that I forget to legislate. The Prophet forgot in the Salah. That was a blessing upon the Muslims for him to forget. He said, O Messenger of Allah. Abu Bakr wouldn't speak, Umar wouldn't speak. The people left the masjid. He made the salams after 2 rak'ah. The people were afraid. The people were afraid to speak. But there was a man whose name was Al-Khirbaq. Dhul Yadain. His hands were huge, brolic hands. bare hands, real big hands. You know brothers like this, right? I'm sure you know a brother like that, have really big hands. He had the courage to speak to the Prophet ﷺ. And he said, "O Messenger of Allah, have you forgotten, or has the prayer been shortened?" Have you forgotten or what? He says, "Lam ansa." He says, "I didn't forget, nor was the prayer shortened." And he said to him, "Nay, rather, O Messenger of Allah, what? Knowledge doesn't stop because the lights go off, Ikhwan. It doesn't stop just because we're in the dark. Alhamdulillah for the light that we have. I had a teacher once in Medina when we were in the class studying at Takhrij, and the different students that would bring their laptops, they would bring their computers and their tablets, etc. He said these things, they seem good. This is in the early days of the iPad and stuff, and the advanced software. He said, they seem good. He says, but what do you do when you go somewhere, you're doing a class, you're doing a lecture, a workshop, and electricity cuts off? And you don't have anything in your chest or your heart. And then what do? That's why many of the Salaf, they would say, the knowledge that you can't take inside the hammam isn't what? It isn't knowledge. They would say the knowledge that you can't take in the bathroom isn't actually what? Meaning that you gotta have it where? No matter where you go. I don't need the iPad, cut it off. I don't need the pen and the pad. Do you understand this? As we said earlier, from the what? From the top. Tight. So with that being said, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I didn't forget, and the prayer was not shortened. He says, rather you have forgotten, O Messenger of Allah. And then he asked the people, As-sadaqa dhul yadaini, the man with extra hands, double-sized hands, has he told the truth? He says, he has spoken the truth, O Messenger of Allah. And that's when the Prophet, he finished the 2 rak'ah, and he made the sujood of sallahu. And that is a sunnah and a legislation for us to this day. So Allah decreed upon him that error as a what? As a mercy. As a what? As a mercy. For someone who's dead, someone whose heart is dead, someone who's been beat down by sin and disobedience, he doesn't feel anything. Why do you have to do that? It's like another day to me. And we ask Allah to protect us from that. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah then says, وَإِذَا كَانَتْ سَعَادَةُ الْعَبْدِ فِي الدَّارَيْنِ مُعَلَّقَةً بِهَدْيِ النَّبِيِّ صلى الله عليه وسلم فيجب على كل من نصح نفسه وأحب نجاتها وسعادتها أن يعرف من هديه وسيرته وشأنه ما يخرج به عن الجاهلين به ويدخل به في عداد أتباعه وشيعته وحزبه والناس في هذا بين مستقل ومستكبر ومحروم والفضل بيد الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. He ends the chapter in a paragraph by saying, and if this is the case, if the servant can only be happy in both worlds, because you could be happy in this world but miserable in the hereafter, or miserable in this world but at least what? Happy in the hereafter. And obviously there's some people whom Allah gives what? Gives both. Allah Akbar. Happy in both worlds, even happy in the hereafter. He says if the servant's happiness is based off of the Prophet's guidance, he says, then anyone who respects himself and what's good for him or herself, then he must know a basic standard to remove himself of ignorance regarding the Prophet. For you not to be from the jahilin, the ignorant people, those who know nothing about the Prophet. Everyone, if you really want good for yourself, and if you respect yourself, then you have to have a basic standard of knowledge of the Prophet ﷺ and his guidance. Huh? So if that's the basic level, then that means the more knowledge of the Prophet, the more detailed ilm you have of the seerah, then you're supposed to be what? Happier. And further from Allah's punishment. And closer to Allah's what? Man yuridillahu bihi khayran faqihu fi din. Allah was good for the servant, He gives him fiqh for the deen, in the deen. Ibn Qayyim says, for a person not to be from the jahilin regarding the Prophet, and for one to be included in the followers of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu. Listen to these two words Ibn Qayyim mentions. This is not me. Like last time we were here, we don't make up things. This is the word for word translation. He says to be from the Shia of the Prophet sallallahu, and to be from the Hizb of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Imagine if I said that in a khutbah or class. We have to be from the Shia of the Prophet. It's upon us to be a Shia of the Messenger. When they would say, he's calling you to be a Shi'i. He's slandering Abu Bakr and Umar. Huh? And the ignorant fool doesn't even realize that the word Shia is mentioned in the Quran. وَإِنَّ مِن شِيعَتِهِ. Huh? What's the verse? Allah says, and indeed from his Shia is who? It's Ibrahim. Meaning from his followers. That's what the word Shi'i linguistically means. A follower. A devoted follower. That's why they call themselves Shia. We are followers, lovers, companions, supporters of Ahlul Bayt. And that's why the proper term of a Shi'i is a Rafidi, especially today. That's a term that they don't like. Everyone understand this? They don't, many people, they think that the different groups and the schisms, and they think that they call themselves, we call them. No. They call themselves Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. They call themselves the followers of the Prophet. They call them, you give them the name Shia, Khawarij. That's not what they want. Call themselves. Ignorance. Everyone understand this? They believe that what they're doing is correct. Everyone understand this or not? So what Shia means, a follower, a group, followers, party. So there's an honorific title to them. But instead they're Rafidah because they refuse. Who did they refuse? They didn't refuse the Prophet. They refused the Prophet. They wouldn't be called Muslim. Who Sahaba? Who? La. That's on the surface. So you know that's not the answer. It's too easy. La. They refuse someone else. That's how they got the name Rafidah. Because the word Rafidah, Rafadad. Rafidah, to refuse. What did they refuse? La. Right hand, Jabba. Ibn Qayyim says, Allah of the messenger, and from the messengers, from his party. Huh? He says, and the people regarding this is the last sentence, he says, the people regarding this issue are one of three. So before I translate this, I want you to ask yourself, which of the three are you? Which of the three am I? He says, mustaqillin, wa mustakfirin, wa mahrumin. People that only do a little, people that have an abundance, and people that are totally deprived. Totally deprived, unlucky, left out. Mustaqil. I know a little bit about the Prophet Sira, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, Abdul Muttalib. He was born in this year, the year of the elephant, kada wa kada, skimming on the surface, because you only read a little bit. And the lectures that you listen to, if you listen to a lecture 3 hours a day, 2 hours and 30 minutes is about something else. In most cases, subhanAllah, the lectures, in most cases that you listen to about someone else's life, besides Muhammad. And then you wonder why you don't know much about his what? About his life. And those lectures, as we read, could be what? Important. And this person's life could be a benefit. But the durura, the necessity is what? He says what? Way above. Everyone understand these words? You understand these words? So he says, so those who only read and listen and learn a little bit about the seerah, mustaqil. And then there's the opposite, mustakthir. All of the day, 3 hours, 5 hours, I listen to lectures on YouTube, on podcasts, driving to work, on the train, riding my bike, jogging, whatever I do, I'm listening about the seerah. Prophet's life, Uhud, Badr, Ahzab, Hudaybiyah, fled, seerah. I have a problem with my wife in the household, seerah. My children, Sira. At the masjid, Sira. My neighbors, Sira. Muslims being minorities, Sira. And then last but not least, you have the good, the bad, and the what? The ugly. That's right. Those mahrum. They have no knowledge of the Prophet whatsoever. That's sad. May Allah protect us from being like that. Ibn Qayyim, he concludes this by saying, and the bounty is in the hands of Allah Azza wa Jalla. He gives it to whom He wills, to whom He pleases. And this goes to show you the ugliness of an envious person. As the ulama of Islam say. Someone who's ugly, or who's envious, a green-eyed monster, as we say, the worst things that he has to deal with is that he's displeased and angry with Allah. It has nothing to do with you. His sickness is deeper than that. Allah chose this individual for this virtue. And you hate that person, and you envy him, and you're jealous. In actuality, you're displeased with what? what Allah gave. Allah's bounty is in His hand, and He gives it to what? And this is what prevented the Quraysh from accepting Islam. أَهَؤُلَاءِ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا He says, أَهَؤُلَاءِ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ بَيْنِنَا. Allah says, these individuals, Allah blessed them without us. This is what they said about this companion and that companion, Bilal radiallahu anhu, and Ibn Maktoum, and Ammar, and so on and so forth. They don't understand this? They said these about the companions, this servant, this peasant, this one, that one. And we are the nobles of Quraysh. And He gave them iman and not us. They were displeased with Allah's qadr. Alayhe, sallahu bi'a'lama. Allah says, does Allah not know who's grateful from those who are ungrateful? So the bounty is in the hand of Allah, and He gives it to whoever He pleases. Wallahu dhul fadl al-azim. And Allah is the possessor of limitless bounty. Inshallah ta'ala, our next class, it will be announced when it will be. And we will actually begin the book and actually roll up our sleeves, inshallah, and get busy with the seerah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and the benefits that we can take therefrom. I thank everyone for listening, for watching, for being attentive and participating, for your respect and good thoughts of us. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah will give you both the reward and the tangible knowledge, and Allah surely knows best. I don't know if we have time for questions after the adhan. Let's see how that goes, inshallah ta'ala. Those who are online, if they want to hold on to after the adhan, inshallah ta'ala, we'll see how it works. Jazakumullahu khairan.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
Can you go into the live stream, teacher? See about the questions, please. Do you mind reading the questions, please? Are there any questions from the live stream? Are there any questions from the brothers and sisters here? Are there any questions on the topic or off the topic from the brothers and sisters here before we take any, or some if any, from the online, from online? Fadil Akhi. I'm sorry? Right. The question says, who did the Rafidah reject? It's a good question. And I never promised to give you the answer. Inshallah, research it. Look into it. You'll appreciate it more. If you don't find it after you sweat a little bit, I have no problem in telling you. You know the policy, right? Right. Fadil Akhi, raise your right hand. Always the right hand. From the things I learned when I was in Yemen, always raise the right hand and never your left hand in the class. Fadl.
I've read that a lot of the Sira books is mentioning that everything is not authentic. Is that in the ayat, whatever you want?
Question says, I've heard that all of the Sira books aren't necessarily the most authentic, aren't necessarily sound, right? Is Zadul Ma'ad one of the sounder books? Jazakallahu khairan, a very important question, which an entire lecture can be given just on this one question, without any exaggeration. Very important and dangerous question. Is it true that all of the information in the books of Sira isn't necessarily authentic? Yes, that's true, without a question. In light of the statement of Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, Aballahu an yatimma ila kitabu. He says that Allah will never allow a book to be absolutely perfect but His. Allah will not allow, Aballah, Allah refuses to give that status to any book besides His. Any book that's not the Quran or Kareem. To be absolutely 101% flawless. No. So of course, a book written by any scholar or Imam of Hadith or this person, one way or another is going to have a shortcoming, is going to have a flaw, is going to have an error, something that needs to be done. Anyone, I said. Including anyone and everyone. That's what Imam Shafi'i said. And there's no doubt. No true scholar of Islam can differ on the validity of that statement. One who's actually practiced and went into the books and read and studied and compared. Huh? Someone who's experienced and seasoned and seeking knowledge. Allah refuses for a book to be perfect, 101% besides His, Azza wa Jal. So the books of Sira were written by who? Men. They were put together by men, compiled by men. So no matter how much knowledge those men had, or those women had, how good their intention may have been or may have not been, there is always going to be room for error. That's the purity of Islam. Understand this? That's the what? The purity of Islam. We don't want to go off track. Because we could go off track with the defilement of this understanding. There's no such thing as this person has a mistake. Or Sheikh Funan said something wrong. We don't believe that he's exempt. But we've never ever found a mistake. Ever. Okay. All of the people that wrote a 700-page book here. A 500-page book here. A 10-tape lecture series here. This is all balted. A lie. He's ignorant. He's a fool. But you say that you don't believe that he's exempt from mistake. That doesn't add what? Doesn't add up. If I wrote a 700-page book about you, you think that nothing is going to be right? And you were in a boxing match and you fought 12 rounds to the end, 15 rounds back in the day. No matter how good of a boxer you are, I'm going to land at least what? He didn't touch me the whole fight. This is the reality, what we're dealing with here. This is serious. It's not a joke. So therefore, there isn't a book that is absolutely flawless except for Allah's book. Principle number one. Principle number two. The books of Sira were written by men, compiled by men, so it's going to be error. Point number three, like we read from Ibn Qayyim, there's going to be levels. There's certain books which are 90%, 80%, 75%, that's a high percentage, accurate. And every books are going to be what? Not so accurate. Principle number four, when we say mistake or inaccurate or something is wrong, know for sure that this is relative. A Shafi'i rahimahullah says it's right, and Imam Malik says it's wrong. Who's right, who's wrong? Imam Ahmed said the hadith is sahih, and Ad-Daraqutni rahimahullah said it's daif, or Bukhari said it's daif. So it's subjective. It's subjective. And people think that the sciences of hadith are outside of the influence of human beings. No. The scholars of hadith agree and they also differ. Just like they agree and differ in what? Everything else. In fiqh, and this and that. There's no difference. There's schools of law in hadith. And just because a scholar says a hadith is sahih doesn't mean that the rest of the scholars agree, or vice versa. So in the Sira book, a person may say this is da'if, this is weak, this is not authentic. And another scholar may say, no, the story is authentic. The Prophet did do this. The Prophet did say this. You clear on this or not? This is a brief. How do you know as a layman Muslim? Unless you arm yourself with some basic principles. And at the end of the day, you're going to blindly follow the one whom you trust the most. You clear on this or not? The next principle is, the ulama of Islam, they say, is that when it comes to the seerah, there's more room. There's more leniency with regards to weak narrations Then with regards to Aqidah or Fiqh, Halal and Haram. Stories that are famous and popular in the Sira, which may not have the most strong chain of narration. It's well known, passed down from generation to generation, and no one went against it. Yumasha, Yurwa, it's mentioned, it's narrated. Everyone understand this? It's in brief. That's what said this needs an entire lecture. And this misunderstanding that a weak hadith is totally useless. That's not true. That's not the way of the salaf salih. That a weak hadith is totally useless. That's not true. That is incorrect. Fabricated hadith, extremely weak hadith, that's a different story. So with that being said, the books of Sira, they differ. The different levels of the Sira books. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala in general was one of the greatest scholars of Islam. Period. Not the, but one of the greatest scholars of Islam. Period. So obviously, the power that Allah placed into his pen is going to be about anything he writes about. But it does not mean that everything in there is exempt from error and infallible. It doesn't mean that. Ibn Qayyim's book, rahimahullah ta'ala, is a book on Sira, but at the same time, it's a bit different than the traditional books of Sira that start off, that stop and end in a story style. Ibn Qayyim, he talks about issues, he discusses fiqh, aqidah, ahkam, tafsir. He goes all the way in. That's one of the reasons why the book is not classified in the traditional sense as a book of Sira, like Ibn Hisham's book, which is based off of the Sira style. Clear on this or not? So Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah book is an excellent book. It's a sound book. It's not a perfect book, but it's a sound book, like other books are sound. But the traditional books of Sira are going to be a bit different, oftentimes easier. We're going to talk about things in a different way and in a different manner. The general rule is, any book that you can get from Ibn Qayyim in Arabic or English, you should buy. General rule. There's no questioning, buy it. Just like we go to the clothes store. It has this label on it. You do what? They don't make bad stuff. They don't make corny stuff. Boots, shoes, underwear, they don't what? They don't make bad stuff. All of this stuff is of good quality. It may not be the best. Other companies specialize in things. But this company, buy it. Inshallah, Ibn Qayyim. But it doesn't mean that everything that Ibn Qayyim says is agreed upon by the rest of the ulama. It doesn't mean that. Ibn Taymiyyah does not mean that. They were men. They were humans. They were what? And there's no disrespect to state that. There's no disrespect to what? State that as reality. The Prophet himself, he was commanded to say, "Inna ma'ana basharun mithlukum." I'm a human being like what? Like you. So therefore, Ibn Qayyim, his book is an excellent book. And there are many other Sira books which are very good. And are sound in general. But there's not going to be one book that's absolutely 100%, everything is going to be right. Because there are many Sira stories that in the Mizan al-Naqt al-Hadithi, and the scale of Hadith science, may not fit the mark. But it's a famous story that does not contain a bad and negative meaning. Everyone understand this? There are many things, stories that are well known. This battle, this date, doesn't have an authentic chain of narration. But it doesn't have a bad meaning. And there are other prophetic stories, Sira stories that are very popular, but have a bad meaning. From those, what the ulama of Islam mentioned, that the Prophet ﷺ was thinking about committing suicide and killing himself. Is that authentic? And if it is inauthentic, does it have a bad or good meaning? That the Prophet was about to take his life because of stress and worry and grief. Another example of this, and it's going to show you extreme and lack of understanding, the story of the spider web. When I grew up as a young Muslim, I was taught never to kill a spider. Right? Never get rid of cobwebs in your house because of Abu Bakr and the Prophet when they came, and they were almost saw and spotted by the mushrikeen, and the story says that there was a spider's web. And they said there's no way that they could have entered into the mouth of the cave with the spider's web there. It's impossible. And then Allah gave and inspired the spider to thread the web on the spot as a miracle to protect his prophet and to protect his Siddiq. Is that story sahih or not? If it's not sahih, let's ask the question, does it have a bad meaning? Is it something negative? Is it impossible for Allah to do? Is it not in the Quran al-Kareem that the ant spoke? قَالَتْ نَمْلَةٌ an ant said, Ya ayyuha an-namlu dukhulu masakinakum, la yahtimanna Sulaymanu wa junuduhu, wa hum la yash'urun. The ant said, oh ants, don't let Solomon and his army trample upon you. And Solomon and his army knew not that the ant was speaking. Does Allah not say that He's revealed to the bee how to construct his home and his house? It's not impossible. And oftentimes people, they go so hardcore in something and it takes them away from something that is from the Quran and the Sunnah. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah mentions in Al-Aqidah al-Wasitiyah, Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah believe in karamatul awliya. They believe in the supernatural things of Allah's chosen servants. And it doesn't mean that you're a Sufi if you believe in them. As the people, they go extreme in this. Allah could give a righteous person a miracle. Something that's beyond the natural. Umar radiallahu anhu, famous story. Where's the isnad for this story? Is it Sahih? Umar radiallahu anhu was given a khutbah one day, he said. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He gave him a vision that one of his generals was in trouble. And he's about to get outflanked by the Kuffar army. And Umar radiallahu anhu was shown this sign, and he said in the middle of the khutbah, Ya Sariya al-Jabal. He said, oh Sariya, the mountain. And the general got what Umar radiallahu anhu had said from miles away to take a defensive position in the mountain and avoid the attack of the army. That's not being a Sufi to believe in that. Is that impossible for Allah to do? Once we start thinking like that and talking like that, we're going to reject the Quran. The shaitan urinates in your ear when you oversleep. How is that? There's nothing in my ear? When you placed in the grave, a person is smashed and squeezed and punished. We dug the person up a week later and his body is intact. That's the foundation of Iman. Those who believe in the what? Unseen. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, walking on water. The list goes on. It's not impossible. The problem is going extreme in that. And claiming it and lying. And basing your faith off of that. Like the Catholics do. A miracle. A saint. That's the problem. There's a balance. Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, there's a what? A balance. And Allah could give something to someone that's supernatural. ألا إن أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون الذين آمنوا كانوا يتقون لهم البشرى أين في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة. Allah says, indeed, the awliya of Allah will have no sadness and no grief. Those who had Iman and Taqwa, for them is the good tidings, the glad tidings in this world and the what? In the hereafter. This is a very important concept. And this is a part of the way of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah as well. That you don't hear and that you don't read about. That's in the books of the ulama of Islam. So we have to be mindful of this. And Allah knows best. Are there any other questions? Any questions on the live stream? Father Jabir.
What's the best way or best approach to teach your children and your family about the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
The question says, what's the best way or the best approach to teach your family the seerah of the Messenger of Allah? Is the live stream on? It's not on. Okay, so I've made another mistake. Sorry about that, guys. You all forgive me. I know why. Too late now. Qadr Allah. Tight. Al-Muhim. What's the best approach to teach your children the seerah? Inshallah, we're going to speak about that in our upcoming classes. But in brief, I would say is to make the seerah practical. Make it practical. Take it away from the theory, but make it alive and living. Walking down the street, driving in a car, going to school, we're minority Muslims. The Prophet was once a minority. Oh, Abby, I read that they did this to these Muslims, they killed these Muslims. There was once a time in which they did what? To the companions. I had a dream, Abby. The Prophet had a dream. And he explains to us the importance of dreams. I have friends, good friends. Who should I hang around? The Prophet had good friends. Make it practical. Make it real life to your children. And reward them. Every time you read a book on the seerah, the Prophet, or the companions, I'll buy you something, I'll give you something. Make it taste sweet to them. Make it fun for them. Make a game. a contest in which they challenge themselves to outdo their siblings in good. وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. Not jealousy, but competing upon good. Make it something that is practical and fun for them. And obviously, depending on the child, the age of the child, the gender of the child, you can actually sit down and teach them out of a book. But not all children. Some children can't sit still. They don't have long attention span. So you have to break it down. This is all a part about being a good teacher. And that's from the responsibilities of being a father or a mother. You don't have to be the best teacher, but you have to have some basic goodness. How to get the message across to your child. And if you can't do it, then at least allow those who can to do it. Once we were in the house of Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahab al-Aqil in Medina. He had a meeting for the American students. I think it was the first Wednesday of every month, in which a lot of American brothers will go. The Bloods and the Crips. Seriously. The brothers that didn't speak to these and those, all of them, they agreed that this sheikh is what? He's okay. This is a real story. I'm not making this up. No doubt. So, in his household, he would do the class after Salat al-Isha. But if you got to his house before the Iqamah of Isha, before the Adhan, you could catch him when there's only a few people there. Or even after Isha, if you got there early enough before the crowd came, you could actually sit with him and he would entertain you, you could talk to him, ask him questions, whatever you wanted to do. So, this is how I put in the story about if you can't do it, allow someone who can. Have enough humility to allow that. He was being asked questions about dawah and seerah, wallahi, about the seerah. And he said those words, he says the student of knowledge must have, he says, ma'rifatun tafsiliyatun, a detailed knowledge of seerah. And how powerful the seerah is. And you give brothers instruction when they go back to their country, how they're outnumbered. The Sufis run my country, the Rafida run my country, we're the minority, so on and so on. What to do? Should we fight them? Should we refute them? Should we join sides with them? What should we do? He would give advice and give his view and his opinion on these issues. So one day, he was trying to give the brothers a lesson about strategy, being strategic in your da'wah, not being reckless, and being patient, and being tender, kind, and soft in your da'wah. And not getting to every fight that someone calls you out to, let alone attacking. That's what he said. And he mentioned a story about some students of knowledge who came from Sudan. Sudan, they speak Arabic, knowledge is there, well-known legacy of Sudan. And we also know that Sudan is a country, like many other countries, which is full of Sufis. Full of Sufis. Riddled with Sufis, infested with Sufis. And of different levels. Some are really, really bad, some are just like this, etc. So many of the students of knowledge who studied in Medina, they would go back to their country, they didn't have a masjid to work at. They didn't have a center, they didn't have no occupation, they didn't have no platform to teach them. What are we to do? So he mentioned a story of how some Tulab al-Ilm, they went back to their countries, they went back to Sudan specifically, and they only did tahfidh of the Quran. That was it. We know the Quran, we memorize the Quran, we have Ijaz in Medina. They're not going to let us teach and get on a member, but they'll allow us to teach the children. But there were some older brothers that were in the way. These guys are Wahhabis. Don't let them teach your children anything. These guys are brainwashed from Saudi. They've thrown away the Sudani culture. Get rid of them. But they kept teaching the children and teaching the children just Quran. He says, so after some time went by, and they start spitting out and producing hufaz. My son has memorized the Quran. My son has learned the Quran by heart. Whatever you're saying is Allah above the throne. And my son has memorized the Quran in your class. Gain respect. So some of the older Sufis and the senior Sufis that were hardcore and staunch, after they start seeing the wheel turning, the students learning the Quran and benefiting the Quran, they said to them, they says, these are your children, do whatever you want with them. Teach them whatever you want to teach them. They're yours. You've produced this type of positivity, do what? Fuck them. So the point of the story, the moral story, hopefully is clear with regards to children and what to do and what not to do and what to focus on and how the benefit that will come from it. The point of the story, the moral story, hopefully that's clear, huh? With regards to the seerah and doing things in this way and how to teach your children what? The seerah. So this is a very important issue. Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Is there any other questions? We will stop now. Jazakumullah khairan. Fadl. Ka.
They teach in seerah in the Quran or just the Quran?
Says, is there seerah in the Quran or not? Of course, the Quran al-Kareem is one of the greatest sources of seerah. When you read the story, Tabbat Yada Abi Lahabin wa Tab,
That's
Surah Masad, that's about the seerah. There was an evil, ugly man who hated the Prophet, and his wife hated the Prophet, and he wanted to do harm to the Prophet, and Allah said that they will be ruined. That's seerah. Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. It's talking about what? Sira. Fadl. Abu Talib, his wife. That's right. The Quran is full of Abu Lahab. No, not Abu Talib. Abu Lahab. Yes. Many, many stories. The Quran is full of Sira. طيب جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك وبحمدك. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت. أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.